This lesson is all about AJAX calls, so making fetch and xHR requests. So before fetch, we had one option, and that was XML HTTP requests or xHR requests. In order to interact with servers, we could retrieve data from another URL without having to do a page refresh. So this is what's known as AJAX. There's a quick example of it here, and there's a bunch of different ready states. So do a quick run through of what's available at the Mozilla documentation. So we've got our event target, we've got our request, and then we've got the request object coming back. So we can construct that, and it's got a bunch of different properties that we utilize, such as status, and then the response text as well. So this is what comes back from the request. And these are all read-onlys. There's different ready states that the request will go through. So at first, it's unsent, and then it's opened, headers received, loading, and done. So ready state 4 is a completed request, and that's the one that we're looking for when we've got the xHR requests. You can also check the different ready states. So using the different methods, we create the xHR object, and at first it's unsent, so state will be 0. Then we use open, and this opens up. This is where we specify the URL. So this updates the ready state, and this is the ready state opened. Next, we've got loading. So when we've got on progress method that we're using, and we can do stuff here as well at this point. And in this case, we're outputting to the console log that's loading. And then lastly, but of course not least, is done. And this is the last ready state, so ready state 4, where we're looking for, and we've got the response back from the server. And you can also, of course, you need to send it in order to go through the different ready states, because it's not going to move past the first one unless you actually have the xHR object send. Also, status is important, because status and the status codes that are returned back, and you might be familiar with some of them, like 200 is okay. That means that you had a successful request. And one of them that often comes up is 404, so that means that the URL is not found, and you've probably seen that on web pages. So these are the error codes that are typically seen. So let me show you how this works. So the first thing we do is we set up our xHR object, and we define a new XML HTTP request object. So within itself, if you go into the console and if you output into the console, you're going to see that this is the request. And here's all the ready states and all the different methods that are available. So we had the onload and everything that can get invoked. And as well, this is that ready state value. So we're sitting at ready state 0. The next thing that we want to do, we want to actually set up a URL. So this can be a const, and setting up a URL. So there's a number of different web APIs that you can use. This one is going to be called Chuck Norris Jokes. So it's an API, it's an open API, and it's great for testing as well as entertainment. So you've got API, Chuck Norris Jokes, IO, and we go to jokes and random joke. You can also load this within your browser, and you can see that you're going to get a response back. So this is going to be within a JSON format, and you see that we get the joke being returned back. So that's what we're after when we do our request. We want to get some information from the server. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to xHR and open this and specify the method that we want to use. So we're using the get method, and we're posting to the URL that we're specifying. So when we do that, we see that our ready state has changed. Those of you that saw that, so we state ready state 1. So that's where we're opening up the request. And then the next one is going to be send. So we're going to send the request. And we see the ready state change to 4. So it went through all the ready states and everything was good, as well as status 200. So that's another one that you can look for, just to make sure that you do have everything ready. There's another one that you can track. So that's on ready state change. And this is expecting a function parameter. And this is the one that's commonly used in order to track the ready state changes. So if I output the ready state value into the console, you're going to see that once we do the request, so we start out at 1, and then we're outputting that console information, and then we're completing the request. So we've got information, and the request has been sent, and then we've got the connection to the server, and we've got our response back. So that was great. And before you try to use the response, it's always a good idea to make sure that you do have that response data. So make sure that the ready state is equal to 4. And also, you can also check to make sure that, so you can also do another one that xHR status is also equal to 200, because that means that you have a successful return on the content. And then now you can output into the console your xHR response object. So make sure that's double equal signs. So this is our response back from the server. And then that means that we can also utilize this within our code. So we can get that information sent, and using the JSON parse, because this is a string value that gets returned. So you can use and create an object. So I'll just call that the joke. And we're going to use JSON parse because we've got a string and we're trying to parse it through. And what we have is that xHR response value. And I can console log out the joke because now it's within an object format. And now you can output that information. So you can output the value if you want. So if you just want to see the joke, you can see the value gets output there. And this, every time the page reloads, it's going to be a different joke because again, it's connecting to the server for this one. And you can use any of the information that's coming back here. So you can also use the image icon if you wanted to and update the HTML. So selecting the document object and using query selector, we do have a div on the page. So I'm going to select that div and update the inner HTML of that div with content that's been returned back. So we've got our joke value. So we'll output the joke there. So see the joke gets output into the console, into the content. And we can also add in and create an image to that if we wanted to. And the source of this, so to break out of the string, so I got a single quote that. And this is joke URL. So this will be dependent on what the server is returning back. I'll close off that string. So see we get the image being returned back as well. And then also the content. So you can pause the video and try the xHR object, the xHR request. You can use the same API or connect to any of the other APIs that are available. And coming up next, we're going to cover fetch. So go ahead and try this. And coming up next, we're going to do fetch within the same format and connecting to the same API. And I'll show you the difference between the two.